Okay, you see this woman? This is Dr. Barbara Oakley, and her history is fascinating because although she is now a world-renowned professor in engineering, she spent the first 26 years of her life hating mathematics.
I'd never really cared for math in the first place. I just didn't think, it was useful at all, and I certainly didn't think I had the math gene.
And this is quite interesting because what finally led to her not only dominating the field but also loving mathematics was simply the use of better learning techniques. In fact, Dr. Oakley is frequently cited saying that with adequate study techniques, learning mathematics is not only easier but also more fun. And you know what? I think the same thing applies to medicine. And yep, that also goes for those very tough topics that sometimes feel entirely dependent on memory, like pharmacology, microbiology, and anatomy. And to show you that that's the case, in this video I'm gonna use one of my favorite study techniques that uses basically your creativity and imagination to teach you one very advanced, if I may say, neuroanatomy topic. I'm not going to spoil the surprise saying which topic it is, but if you just play along with me for this amount of minutes, I promise that you're going to walk out of this video remembering to the T a topic that you otherwise would have struggled to memorize. Okay, so to remember the topic we want to learn, all we need to do is remember the face of a monster. That's it. If you manage to remember the face, I promise that you remember the topic. So this monster's face has some interesting details. The first one of which is his red eyes, his big red eyes. So I want you to focus on these couple of red eyes and feel as if they're piercing through your soul.
Oh man, that's deep.
Now, coming out of those eyes, there are a couple of horns, but these are not your normal horns. These horns are like the tails of a lemur, and this is a lemur in case you haven't seen one. These are completely lovely and apparently love people rubbing their backs. Okay, next imagine that the monster has a spider attached between his eyes. And this is not a typical tiny spider, this is a huge spider with a couple of very tall legs descending all the way through the monster's face. But this spider doesn't have 8 legs like most do, it only has 3. 2 in the bottom and 1 very tiny leg on top, as you can see here. Now, this spider has in the center of his body an aquatic blue symbol, like this one, and surrounding the aquatic blue symbol, the spider has a gray color all over her body. And this spider is resting on top of a net, which we're drawing just like this, yes, like the spider net. Okay, after this we have the diabolic smile of the monster, which, as you can see here, is kind of disfigured and interrupted in the middle. And on top of that, instead of teeth, he has little tiny crosses all across his mouth, kind of like a cemetery in his mouth. Now, between the smile and the red eyes, there's black paint, like the ones warriors put on themselves before battle. And finally, on top of his head, the monster has a telephone. You know, one of those old ones that kind of look like this? So yeah, a telephone. And that's it. Now just take a couple of seconds to go through everything in your mind, like the eyes, the horns, everything. And if you manage to do so, if you manage to remember everything we talked about, without knowing it, you just memorize all the important structures in the cross-section of the midbrain. As easy as that. So let me show you how it works. You remember the first thing we said about the monster? Yes, that it was about the red eyes. Remember the red big eyes. So that, my friend, is there to remind you of the red nucleus, and you can see it right here. Then we talked about a couple of horns coming out of those eyes, right? Remember how did those horns look like? Yes, like the tail of a lemur. And that's because lemur sounds a bit like lemnisci. Lemur, lemnisci. It's a retrieval cue. And so that's because here in the lateral structures to the red nucleus you find the 4 lemnisci. Alright, then do you remember what was sitting between the eyes? A spider, right? Now, how many legs did our spider had? 3, right? Well, that's because these couple of structures that you see descending here are the 3rd cranial nerve. Now, what did the spider had in the middle of her body? A blue aquatic sign, right? Well, that should remind you of the cerebral aqueduct, which is located right here. Next, do you remember what was the color of the spider? It was gray, because in here we find the famous periaqueductal gray matter. Now, near the body of the spider, there was a net, right? And that's because another name for net is reticule, and the structure here is the reticular formation. Okay, then we had the diabolic smile, and do you remember what did the monster had instead of the teeth? Yes, it has tiny little crosses, and that's because this part of the brain, of the midbrain, is called the cerebral crux. Next, what was going on between the smile and the eyes? some sort of black war paint, right? Well, that is to make you remember that this right here is the substantia nigra. And finally, we had the head, which for some reason had a telephone on top. Why does it have a telephone on top? Because what do you do with a telephone? You make phone calls, right? You make calls, and calls starts with call, which also sounds a bit like colliculi, right? So these are the collicula, which are superior and inferior, but basically they are both called the colliculi. So let's see how much you learned. What is this? And what is this? Okay, and what's this? And what's this? And finally, what's this? Alright, you got it. Now, in case you're wondering, these are called visual retrieval cues, which are a group of techniques, of which, yes, in case you're wondering, Sketchy works in a very similar manner to this one because they also use images, but contrary to Sketchy, these images are done by yourself. That's the whole point, that you create the image. I created this for you to make an example, but the whole point is for you to create them yourself, which is not that hard actually when you start practicing it. And you know what's really cool? That next time you're in class and you hear something like the main function of the red nucleus is to adjust the movements of the upper limbs to maintain balance, you won't feel like 90% of med students feel.
Which nucleus?
No, because in your head, the red nucleus is a known concept. It's the eyes of the monster, present in the center of the midbrain. You know it, and because you know it, you're able to attach details to it. And so this stops being this random piece of information of a random nuclei located God knows where, and it starts being, oh yes, the red nucleus, the guy who is in charge of making me look cool when I walk. Now, I know what you're thinking. Okay, good technique and everything, and I'll try to keep it in mind next time I want to memorize another hard picture in neuro. But how do I learn the rest of the stuff? Not only where the structures are, but also what they do, why they matter, how to use them, how to see them in an X-ray or an MRI, and what are their pathologies, where do I read, how do I read, what do I do? Okay, slow down. Learning all of that stuff is easier than you think. And again, all you really need are the right techniques and the right tools. If you have those couple, again, just as easy as you learn this, you're gonna learn everything else. So join me in the computer to learn more about the tool I recommend and the techniques I suggest to take full advantage of that tool. Let's go. Okay, so the tool I want to recommend you guys is called Kenhub. It's an amazing platform to learn anatomy, and they are very kindly sponsoring this video. So I want to show you in the next few minutes how you can use this tool to make your learning process as effective as possible. Alright, so when learning something new, the first step is always searching for the right article, right? And fortunately enough, Kenhub makes this process seamless in the sense that you can either search for the specific detail you want to learn. For instance, I can just type here red nucleus and have a dedicated article showing you everything you would ever want to know about the topic, or you can just type the big topic, like for example, you can just type midbrain and delve deep into the whole topic using this article. In this case, I want to just use the big midbrain article, but I want to jump ahead straight into the internal anatomy, which I can do using the index here. Okay, now, how can we learn all of this stuff that is written here optimally? Well, the first step is to avoid the temptation to do what 90% of med students usually do, which is translate everything into their notes. No, what we want to do here is make sure we are the ones learning, not our notebooks. And to do that, we need to process the information. And in anatomy, that processing usually takes form of visualizing and comprehending the stuff we're reading. Fortunately, Kenhub comes with a couple of awesome tools that help us a lot in this regard. The first one of them is the interactive videos, which are awesome and walk you through the step-by-step of everything you would ever want to know of a topic with a very interactive mode of explanations. But even if you don't watch the entire videos, you can also take advantage of the amazing image that the platform uses to highlight everything they explain. For instance, this article right here starts by saying that there are two major parts of the midbrain: the cerebral peduncles and the tectum, right? So instead of mindlessly just writing that in your notes, just take a couple of seconds to look at these images, observe the peduncles, the tectum, understand how they would look like from the top, the bottom, the back. Now, one of the things I love about this platform is that all of their explanations are comprehensive yet concise. For instance, look at this explanation right here about the reticular formation. It's amazing, right? In just a couple of paragraphs, they managed to explain what it is, what it does, the location, and the composition. And I've literally tried, and I invite you guys to try reading some of the other anatomy books, and you'll see that to deliver the same amount of information, they sometimes take a whole page or a couple of pages, which is unbelievable. Okay, now one of the reasons we learn anatomy is to apply it in real life, and Kenhub also offers a couple of really useful tools to help us in that regard as well. The first one of which is the clinical corollaries. You can usually find them at the end of each page in a kind of a blue box, and they're extremely useful because they help you to understand why and how the structures you're learning can get damaged, or what kind of syndromes can you expect if damage were to happen. For instance, you can see here that the damage to the tectum, which is the telephone in our monster, leads to having the Parinaud syndrome, whose main characteristic, as you can see here, is a vertical gaze palsy. Okay, the second tool is the radiological library, and that allows you to learn how the structures you're learning in the models, in the images, actually look like in a real diagnostic image, such as a brain MRI. It is extremely useful, and again, it's just a click away in this platform. Okay, and finally, Kenhub has an amazing tool that I love, which is of course the question bank. So this question bank is there to help you test yourself on the topics you're learning. And this is not only a great and fun way to learn, but also an extremely useful review strategy to help you study before an exam. In fact, as I've explained in my course on the science of effective learning, this review method is scientifically proven to be the most effective review technique of the whole bunch to help you study before an exam. So as you just saw, Kenhub is truly an amazing platform, and the best thing is that you can use it to put in practice today the creative techniques you just learned in this video. And the reason you can do this is because Kenhub offers two types of plans: a basic one, which is completely free, and a premium one, which of course costs but offers more things. So the basic one gives you access to the entire library and the entire atlas, which is a bunch of information. Everything we discussed in the article, all of this information you're seeing right here, and all of these images, all of that you can access for free. But the premium account gives you access on top of this to the videos, to the question bank, and all of the other premium features. But regardless of whether you want to go basic or you want to go premium, I truly encourage you to enter the platform and start learning neuroanatomy with the correct learning techniques, because as we try to elucidate throughout the whole video, it truly can be easier and fun when you use the correct tools and the correct techniques. Oh, and finally, remember that you can use my link to get a 10% of discount in any premium plan of your choice. It's all there in the description in case you're interested. But anyways, thanks a lot Kenhub for sponsoring this video, to you for tuning in, and I'll see you guys in the next one.